right. Thank you. Okay, so my talk is from developing code to developing people. So I want to take you on a journey back to high school. This is me with a sweet perm. It was the 80s. When I was 17, I had the best job. I worked after school and on weekends at McDonald's. I could remember $20 orders in my head. And I really did ask people if they wanted hot, delicious fries with that. On weekends, I would show up at 3:30 in the morning, 2 hours early for my shift, so I could carefully stack the strawberry and grape jam and stack extra ketchup at every register and hand wash the shake machine. The assistant manager was a guy named Daniel who could put away a 30-pack of Keystone Light in an evening. He really wanted me to skip college so I could become a store manager too. I went to college. It would be the last time anyone asked me to be a manager for 30 years. So I'm Doug Ireton. I'm an engineering manager at OneStrategy. We're an AWS consultancy. I was an engineer for 24 years before I became a manager last August, and I still do engineering on a regular basis. I also founded Seattle Coffee Ops in 2015, which is a DevOps community meetup, which has grown from a handful of folks in the back of a Cherry Street coffee to 50 to 60 regular attendees who meet at Chef Software every 2 weeks. So who here has been to a Coffee Ops meetup? Wow, look at that. That makes me happy. That's beautiful. I'm happy now. So for a long time, I had no interest in being a manager. I loved solving hard problems and learning new technology, and I still do, but I also love seeing people grow and succeed. As an engineer at Nordstrom, I had the chance to mentor 2 amazing interns and see them succeed. And I have loved leading Coffee Ops over the past 3 years. But when I tried to make the jump from being a mentor and meetup founder to a manager, I went about it the wrong way and was turned down twice by 2 different companies. So in this talk, I'm going to talk about why leadership matters and why you might want to become a manager. Secondly, I'll talk about how to develop leadership skills when you're an engineer, so you'll be ready to move into a manager role. Finally, I'll talk about how to develop engineers on your team as a new manager. I'll include links to books and blog articles which have helped me as a new manager. Since every good manager must first be a leader, in this talk, I'll use the words manager and leader interchangeably. I assume that you are an engineer who's thought about becoming a manager, or you are an engineering manager who's new to the role. So let's talk about why leaders matter. So leadership is fundamentally about ownership and communication. Good engineers accept responsibility for their work. Good managers accept responsibility for their team and are careful to give credit away. My friend Orion is an engineering manager at Nordstrom. Last year, when Orion was still an engineer, his team lost their manager and their manager's manager. Orion was reporting to a VP who didn't have enough time to really manage the team. Even though he didn't really want to at the time, Orion said yes when asked to be a manager because he felt ownership and responsibility for his team. He knew they would do better with a manager. Fundamentally, Orion cares about people more than technology. He has grown tremendously in his year of being a manager. He feels ownership and responsibility for what his team does, but gives credit away. Through weekly one-on-ones and team meetings, he aligns his team with what Nordstrom is trying to do. Orion helps his team see how what they are doing fits in with the larger context. A leader aligns her team to accomplish the organization's mission by giving them context. Leaders impart meaning to our daily work. Effectively, this means you can't be a leader if you don't believe in what the company is trying to do or how it does business. Think of your company as a person. If you wouldn't be friends with them, then you shouldn't try to be a leader at that company. You can be a successful engineer at a company you don't love, but you probably won't be a very effective manager. Good leaders remember that context about why your team is doing what they're doing is critical to your team achieving success. At One Strategy, where I work, we have a quarterly business review. The purpose of this meeting is to align all 20 of us and give us context. Jen, our business director, and Rich, the founder, share our revenue numbers, and they talk about key customers and markets. Each member of the leadership team shares specific positive feedback about each member of their team. We all look forward to this meeting because it reminds us that our individual and team efforts have a big impact on our customers and our revenue. This quarterly meeting is one of the ways that, as leaders, we give meaning and context to everyone's daily efforts. Managers have more power to shape a company's culture than individual contributors. Think of the worst manager you've ever had. What kind of culture did they create? Probably a culture of fear and distress for the whole team. Now think of the best manager. What kind of culture did he or she create? The best managers that I've had cared for me as a person. They created cultures of transparency and trust. They gave me challenges just a little beyond my comfort zone. They helped focus me on the team and company goals and told me compelling stories about what we were trying to accomplish as a company. A company's most valuable asset is employees who believe in the mission of the organization. A company will only have employees who believe in the mission, vision, and values of the organization if the company's leaders communicate through their actions why people should care. I work for a consulting company, and focusing on our customers and caring about them is one of our core values. Last week, we had a misunderstanding with a customer on how much time something should take. One of our consultants spent 13 hours on an automation project which the customer felt was overkill. He wanted a simple solution, and we gave him an elegant, fully automated solution. My manager, the founder of the company, gave our customer 13 free consulting hours, the whole time that had been used, to make up for that misunderstanding. Rich, the founder, is teaching all of us to put customers first by consistently putting them first himself. Through this consistency, I am learning to think like he does and take on his values, which become our shared values as a company. One of our other core values is creating a diverse team. Right now, our tech company, our consulting company, is 60% women, including 40% women in leadership and 50% women in engineering roles. We've been able to create a diverse team by focusing on expanding our hiring networks, and we don't hire folks who don't support our core values. We schedule quarterly women in tech brunches, invite women speakers, and encourage our leaders and women engineers to attend. Neither of these values, focusing on our customers or creating a diverse team would happen without direct support by the leadership team. Leaders must consistently stoke the fires to keep these values alive. I want to switch gears a moment and talk about one of the most important things in my life, a tech meetup I started called Seattle Coffee Ops. Coffee Ops is a community where folks gather to talk about DevOps culture and tools every other Friday morning. It's often been described as group therapy for engineers. I founded Seattle Coffee Ops after attending a similar group at the yearly Chef Community Summit in 2014 and hearing about the original Coffee Ops started by Jennifer Davis in the Bay Area. From the beginning, I wanted the group to be about creating a welcoming community. Oops, that's not what I wanted. How do I get the... All right, now this is not good. From the beginning, I wanted the group to be about creating a welcoming community. I made it a point to greet each person who came every other Friday and ask how they were doing. I asked everyone to introduce themselves by name so we knew each other as people. When our group grew too big for me to lead by myself, I was careful to choose leaders who understood the value of creating a welcoming community. I made sure to include a woman on the leadership team, even though at the time we had very few women attending Coffee Ops. Okay, now I really need to scroll down. And it's not working. All right, well, that's too bad. Okay, I know that people really like Coffee Ops, but I'd like to share with you some feedback I received last week in our Coffee Ops Slack channel. I asked Harold's permission to share this with you. Harold came to Coffee Ops looking for a different job. He had moved to Seattle from South America and was trying to get a job as a junior developer. Through Coffee Ops, he learned new technologies, he got plugged into the local tech community, and he found a job as a developer. Here's the first part of his feedback. Hi, Doug. Hope everything is going all right. I'm working some back-end stuff in the app at work, and I just want to thank you for making Coffee Ops a reality. All the knowledge I acquired at the meetups has been very useful for my professional life. This is great, right? This is why we're here. But here's the part that made me cry. But more important than everything, every single time I went to Coffee Ops, I felt welcomed and valued as a human being, no matter my level of experience or background. That makes a difference. Thanks again. That's what we are trying to do. Thanks. As a leader, this is exactly the kind of community that we are trying to create. This is why leadership matters. It's 3 years of consistently steering the ship by the same star. It's consistently welcoming people and being willing to have the hard conversations to enforce our code of conduct. Harold summed all of this up in a single powerful sentence. So maybe I've convinced you to try this leadership thing. How do you develop the necessary leadership skills so that you can move into a manager role? So I know this meetup you might find valuable. Coffee Ops is a great place to learn more about technical and non-technical topics. For example, last meetup, someone had a question about the technical impact of European GDPR privacy rules on IT systems. Someone else at the same table replied he was giving a talk about GDPR at VelocityConf this year. Technical topics make up about half of what we talk about. The other half is non-technical topics related to DevOps culture and leadership. We've talked about what you like and don't like about your manager, what qualities make a good engineer, and how to hire well. Coffee Ops is also a fantastic place to network and meet amazing engineers, engineering managers, and recruiters. If you don't want to become a manager at your current company, come to Coffee Ops. You will meet folks from amazing companies where you would thrive as an engineer and then as a manager. Another way to develop leadership skills is to mentor someone on your team. When I was an engineer at Nordstrom, I had the opportunity to mentor 2 college interns. It was good preparation for becoming a manager because I had to think and plan how to give them a clear, meaningful project that they could complete in 8 weeks. I had to give them a meaningful project which would help them in their future career, but also would benefit Nordstrom. At the end of the summer, I had to write a performance review for them. Even if your company doesn't have college interns, you can volunteer to mentor a junior engineer on your team. Once you've been a senior engineer for a few years, you can become a tech lead. A tech lead is a leadership role, even though you may not be anyone's HR manager. 2 years ago, I was the tech lead for the chef team at Nordstrom. I wrote code and built tools, but I also talked with other teams about Chef and helped plan our 6-month roadmap, spoke at ChefConf, and served as the expert on open source licenses for various teams. As a tech lead, writing code isn't the most important thing you'll do. Communicating with other teams, anticipating roadblocks, and unblocking your team is. Camille Fournier's book, The Manager's Path, which I'll talk about again a little bit more in depth, has a clear and well-written chapter on being a tech lead. I highly recommend it. So find a mentor yourself. Making the jump from engineer to manager is undeniably hard. It's a very different skill set. You should find a mentor. Ideally, this is your manager, but it can really be anyone you trust who's further down the manager's path than you are. They can give you an experienced perspective, ask the right questions, and challenge your perspective. One small example, last week during my one-on-one with my manager, who's an amazing mentor, I told him I was concerned about how to manage as my team grows. I asked him if there were any tricks to managing a larger team, but what I was really saying was that I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to handle a larger team. He listened carefully and then let me know I was on the right path. There are no tricks, he said. It just takes time, experience, and practice. That was really what I needed to hear right then. In that small interaction, he let me know that he believed in me and that he knew that I would figure it out. Now I want to give you some resources to help you succeed as a manager. The number one thing I've learned is that reading and books matter a lot. Unlike technology, which moves so fast that a quickly published blog post can be incredibly helpful at just the right time, managing people requires thought and reflection that is better served by time-tested and well-written books. The Manager's Path is a very good book that is organized in a really neat way. The first half of the book is written in the order that you will get promoted. It starts off with an introduction to management, then talks about mentoring, being a tech lead, managing people, managing multiple teams, etc. If you are a tech lead or a new manager, you should absolutely read this book. Laura Huggins. I've been a big fan of Laura Huggins since I met her at Velocity Conference in 2014. Despite what I said about books being better than blog posts, her blog is the exception. These 2 posts have been especially helpful for me as a new manager. The first one-on-one questions and manager energy drain. I normally wouldn't recommend a book that I hadn't read yet, but I've heard from at least 3 different people that it's great. So I've started it. It's at the top of my reading list as my next book to focus on. Now let's talk about developing your team. I have found weekly one-on-ones with my engineers crucial. This meeting isn't a status update. It's a chance for your team members to ask questions about their projects, talk about longer-term career goals, and for you to communicate any important business context that they need to know. It's also a chance for you to really listen to your team members, understand any concerns or struggles they have, and let them know that you believe in them. In one-on-ones, you should be listening more than talking. Here's what Laura Huggins says about one-on-ones. Please have weekly one-on-ones with your direct reports. In those one-on-ones, please be explicit about your report's career progression, feedback you have for them, context from the greater org as you have it, and coaching as they work through problems. Camille Fournier also has a great chapter on one-on-ones in the manager's path, which you should read, by the way. So immediate feedback. So immediate feedback is critical to your team's success. As a consulting company, we often have meetings with clients, no surprise. I often schedule a quick 5-minute one-on-one meeting immediately after a client meeting to give feedback to one of my engineers. It's a debrief to go over what went well and what they should try next time. I also share what I could have done differently in the meeting. It's important for your team to see that you recognize your mistakes and that you try to get better every week. Finally, I'd encourage you to delegate messy and unscoped projects to your engineers. I got this idea directly from Laura Hogan in her Manager Energy Drain blog post. Laura says, often as managers, we want to give our direct reports beautifully packaged, cleanly wrapped gifts of leadership work. It feels like this way we can take care of them and support them in the best possible way. After all, who wants a messy, hard to measure, totally unfamiliar project where you might fail? Sorry to break this to you, but the best gift you can give to your direct reports is a messy, unscoped project with a bit of a safety net. This kind of project creates the biggest opportunity for someone to grow as a leader, as it hones folks' problem-solving abilities, forces them to lean on more people around them, building their support system further, and stretches them far faster into new leadership skill sets and engineering skill sets than cleanly packaged projects do. So what's the bigger idea? Jumping from being an engineer to being a manager is hard. There are a few tips and tricks, but ultimately there are no shortcuts. So here's what I hope you take away from this talk. As a manager, it's your job to genuinely care about people and set them up for success. It's your job to care about the mission of the organization. It's your job to be proactive and take ownership. It's your job to try things, to admit your mistakes, and adjust. That's agile. Leaders have the power and the duty to create cultures where people can thrive. Thank you.